Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to be comparing these two piston guns. We got the FN Scar here and we got the SIG MCX. So both of these are piston guns, and we're also going to make some references to the H&K 416 piston system. So now this one over here is 7.62 by 5.1, 308. This one's 300 blackout. We're going to ignore the caliber because you can also get the Scar in 5.56, and you can also get the SIG MCX in 5.56. So both of these can be in 5.56. So we're going to ignore the caliber here, and basically the issue here is like if you wanted a piston gun, which one might be better for you? Okay, so first of all, let's say why would you want the piston gun? Okay, so main issue with the main advantage of the piston guns is that the gases stay up here where the gas block is. They don't come down into the bolt, and by that you're avoiding two things. You're avoiding more fouling coming back to your bolt, okay, and you're also avoiding heat. Okay, so if you got a direct impingement gun, the bolt gets a lot hotter because the gases are coming all the way back into the bolt. Okay, so guns with piston systems tend to have their bolts run a little bit cooler. Okay, they don't get as hot as they do in the direct impingement guns. Okay, so let's talk about cost. The Scars, they go anywhere from $3,000 to $4,000. Okay, the MCXs, we're talking $1,500 to $2,000. Okay, so by the way, the $3,000 price, I saw that on Palmetto's website. So that seems to be the cheapest place I have found to get a Scar. Okay, so why these things so expensive? I did a prior video where I took both of these guns apart. I mean, material wise, I mean, are there like $2,000 to $4,000 worth of materials in these guns? No, I definitely don't think so. What on the SIG MCX, I think you're primarily paying for name brand and also for the R&D, the research and development that went into this gun. With the Scar, right? With the FN Scar, I mean, at this point, I think most of the R&D has been recovered. They already have military contracts, but the military contract is what's working against you because FN cannot sell the gun cheaper to you than it sells it to the military. Okay, so if so basically, if they've suckered in the military for whatever, let's say $3,000 per Scar rifle, that's the cheapest that they can sell it to you. Okay, so the fact that the FN Scar has a military contract is kind of a pro and a con. Like this has actually been battle tested. They've worked out a lot of the bugs. But you're paying a premium for that, right? You're paying a premium for the fact that the military is still buying these guns, okay? The patents have not expired on these guns so that somebody else can clone them and sell them cheaper. So you're paying, you got to go back to the original designer and basically pay full price. So the SIG MCX, cheaper, but has not been military tested. And what happens is through the military testing process, there's lots of things that kind of like get discovered that ordinarily would not be discovered. So, for example, when the FN Scar was submitted for testing on both 16 and 17 version, what they found is that because these things have the side folding stocks, right? Both of these do. So what they found is that if you hit this hard enough over here, this would pop open. Okay, so that's what that was one of the issue on the original ones. Okay. And that was corrected. Okay. They also had other issues with the this is particularly on the Scar 16, which shoots 5.56. The 5.56 cases were getting caught up in the operating rod area. Okay, so they rectified that by just making a thicker operating rod so that the cases don't get stuck up in there. Another issue that came up with the Scar in testing was that the charging handle is really high to the optics and it can interfere. Okay, so again, these things were discovered early on. When the Scar was submitted for testing. The SIG MCX has not been through that. Okay, So if there's any issues with that, you're not going to know. I mean, I don't know how many. I mean, there's probably not too many people out there that have shot thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds through the SIG MCX the way the scars have been shot. Okay, you know, it's particularly like this one here is a 300 blackout, so again, tends to be more expensive. And there's only so many of these that have been sold. So again, you don't have a lot of people doing very high volume counts, so we can see what, you know, where the problems might be, or where, you know, where they might need to be improved. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk. I want to talk about the stocks in the back. Now, both of these have the side folding stocks. The MCX, basically, you push down with your thumb and it folds in towards your body. Okay. And one of the benefits, if you're a righty, that's great, because no matter how hard you push this over here, it's not going to collapse. If you're a lefty, okay, you could have that issue where under certain circumstances, it can collapse into your body, okay? If you get into some type of a grappling situation. And there's really no lock on this. It just kind of lifts open. So I definitely see, if this gets hit hard enough this way, I can definitely see it folding, but not for the righty. It's not going to fold up for the righty. So with the FN Scar, right, same deal here. With this one, if you're a righty and this gets hit hard enough, this could collapse like this. Now, this does have a lock on it, okay, so you would have to get hit pretty hard. And like I said earlier, this locking system was improved because the earlier ones did collapse pretty easily. However, if you're a lefty, that's not an issue, because now this folds in towards your body. So no matter how hard this is hit here, it's not going to collapse on you. So that's one of the issues with the side folding stocks to be aware of. Now, me personally, I was never, and I got all sorts of AKs. I never felt an urge to put a side folding stock on any of my AKs. I prefer the M4 collapsible stocks. I do have one that is an underfolder that, like, I never use as an underfolder. I always just keep it fully extended. That's how I store it. You know, so I have never had, and this is more like me personal, I have never made use of AKs with folding stocks. I never was inclined to install a side folder on it when it did not have it. I found the collapsible, basically the collapsible is good, because sometimes I'll put people with shorter arms, right? You know, to adjust their trigger pull. So I do like the ability to collapse the stock. So that's like the first thing I changed on my AKs, but I just never felt the need for a side folder. Okay? So that's a personal thing. A lot of times people will talk about storage, like if they're traveling. I mean, if you side fold this, the gun is more compact. There's a couple of times when I was traveling and the bag was kind of small, and all I did was basically I just took the upper and the lower apart, okay, and that made the AR smaller, right? If you separate the upper and lower, you know it's a lot shorter. So that's one of the things I've done in the past with ARs. So again, me personally, never felt the need for a side folder. Now, like I said, both of these are collapsible. The Scar does have an adjustment here where you can raise the comb. Okay, so if you want to raise this higher, it does have that comb. I mean, I shot this a bunch. I really wasn't making use of that. If that's something that you would, if you think that you would make use of it, that's great. It's there. But I've never felt the need to rise it. I was okay. You know, like the standard, was it 2 3/4 height over bore, right? Works fine for me. Okay, so between these stocks, which one do I personally like better? I like the MCX one better. It's just a little bit more minimalist. I mean, it doesn't lock when you fold it, but the fold, especially if you're shooting righty, like it's in towards your body, so that's not an issue. I mean, I wonder if they sell a variation where it folds the other way in case you're a lefty. I don't know the answer to that. Okay, so that's on the stock, which stands out. Next thing I want to talk about is the QD mounting points and the rails. Okay, so the SIG MCX, which is a more, I think, a later design. Okay, has QD mounting points, right? It has one on the stock back here, and it's on both sides, right? So it's both sides, QD here, QD back of the receiver, QD right in front of the receiver, and QD, does it have in the front? Nope, doesn't have in the front. It has three mounting points. So we got 1, 2, 3 QD mounting points, and these are like steel, right? Here, let me show you guys a closer look. So you see how the QD mounting points, that's steel, because a lot of rails have it where it just fits into the aluminum, but the aluminum basically will wear out over time. So the steel ones are a lot stronger. So we got one here, one here, and one back here. Now this one over here, this isn't mine. So the person that wanted a QD point, they had to put this aftermarket attachment, which is really easy because you can see that this is an M-lock rail, okay? And it looks like they put mounted a Picatinny rail up here. So this is M-lock, okay? So this is M-lock, and it's got these built-in QD mounting points, which is really nice. I like that. On the Scar, okay? Now this isn't, again, this is an older version, and it has the key mod, okay? It's got key mod, and it's got H&K hooks, okay? So we got H&K hooks here. Where's the front? And H&K hooks up here, right? Holes, or basically holes to take H&K hooks. Okay, that's what they really want you to use with this, right? They really don't want you using QD points. Now, if you wanted to put a QD point on this, you'd have to get something that fits into the key mod over here, right? And then you can mount it. However, you're going to have a little bit of an issue mounting it to the back of the stock here. Now, on my AR stocks, what I do is I'll get the aftermarket sockets, and I'll just basically screw them in and attach them. This stock's a little bit too thick. I don't know how well that will work. I don't know if you want to do that on this expensive stock. However, they do have this hole here, and I did see a setup where you run a strap through here with a QD mounting point, and you can basically attach your QD back here, okay? So you can do it. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. The cheapest option is to just use the H&K hooks, the way F&N wanted you to use this, okay? Now, if you use the H&K hooks, it can scratch up the gun, right? So what you want to do is there's like these elastic sleeves that go over the hooks so that you don't scratch up the gun. You're going to want to use those, okay? So yeah, that's what they want you to do. Now, I've looked up some of the recent versions of the Scars that are being sold, and what I've noticed is that they have the Picatinny rail. Okay, so instead of having key mod here, they have Picatinny rail, and what I suspect they've done is, if you take off that Picatinny rail, right, you're gonna find that you got the key mod underneath it. So what I think F&N's doing is they're probably selling the military Scars that have M-lock rail, okay? But then they got all these older key mods laying around, and they don't want to just throw them out. So they're selling them to the civilians, but they don't want to hear the civilians complaining about the key mod system. So what they're doing is they're putting the Picatinny over it so that you don't even see it unless you remove it. And that's how they're basically, getting rid of the rails that they have that are key mod instead of the more commonly used now M-lock. Okay, so just pay attention to that. Now this Scar over here, this piece over here, I believe is an aftermarket. It says Midwest Industries. Okay, so one of the things to be aware of is that with these aftermarket ones, right, it can interfere. If you flip up the front sight here, in order to adjust the gas valve, because the stock Scar has two positions. So if you keep it clean, it's a very easy adjustment from suppressor to unsuppressed. Keep it in the suppressor position, even if you're shooting without a suppressor, because there's enough gas there, you don't need the gun beating itself up anymore. Now, with this particular rail here, if you need to, when you need to clean the gas system, right, what you gotta do is you gotta actually push down the indent, rotate it all the way to the 10 o'clock, to the 9 o'clock position when you're looking from the back of the gun, and then you'll be able to pull out the valve and the piston underneath it and clean it. Okay. Now with this rail system here, it seems to interfere a little bit. So that's something just to be aware of if you add these aftermarket rails. And the fix is easy. Basically, I would recommend taking a Dremel and just dremeling down the rail a little bit so that you can rotate the valve all the way to the 10 o'clock position so that you can remove it and clean it. Okay, so that's an easy adjustment. Personally, unless you need this extended rail over here, I don't recommend you add it there, right? So because you're gonna have, if you buy it without the extended rail, you're gonna have some either M-Lock or Keymod or Picatinny. You're gonna have rail on here. So unless you really think you're gonna need this extra section here, it can be a pain in the ass as far as getting to your gas system and cleaning it. And cleaning the gas system is the main thing that you have to worry about, right? Cleaning this gas valve and the piston. There's not that much fouling, and there's no gas that's coming back to your bolt. So so most of your cleaning is going to be up here, and you want to keep this clean because if you don't clean it regularly, you're going to get carbon buildup, and you're going to get carbon lock, and then it's going to be a real pain in the ass to remove it and clean it. So after you're done shooting, or what you want to do is just flip the valve back and forth, and make sure that it will flip back and forth without any difficulty. As soon as you see that you start having some difficulty, right, it's time to clean it. And like I said, you just need to clean the front over here. You don't need to worry so much back here because there's not that much fouling coming back here. Everything's up here. That's the area that you got to clean, okay? So I did a separate video where I took this gun apart. I'm not going to do it here, especially outdoors over gravel. I don't want to take that part over here apart because there's small parts in there, right? You got your valve, which is small, and you got the piston that's small, and I don't want to drop it over gravel. Okay, so we're not going to take that out here in this video. Same deal with the MCX. It's pretty much ideal. Now, in order to the access here is a little bit more difficult with the MCX. Okay, with the Scar, you can clean out. Like if you don't have this aftermarket rail here, you can clean out this valve without taking the gun apart. Because after you rotate this all the way to the 10 o'clock position, you would just lock the gun open. Get you locked open. You would just lock the gun open, and what you're able to do once you remove the valve, you can just take a little Allen key, right, and push. You'll be able to push on the piston and push it out and get it out so that you can clean it. Okay, so you don't need to open up the rest of the gun, which opens up pretty easy. So, to open up the gun, you just push this pin. So unlike an AR, this only has a pin in the front, right? And then what you're going to do is pull the lower receiver out. Now this part over here does not have a serial number. Okay, so unlike an AR where this is the gun, this is the part of the serial number. This does not have a serial number on it. Okay, so this is just a piece of plastic with a trigger group in it. The serial group is the serial number is on this part up here. So basically, the upper receiver is the gun, is the legal gun of the Scar. Okay, so in order, and then from there, you just slide out the boot, right, the stock, and then you push back over here on your charging handle while pulling this down. Okay, so that's our charging handle. This is the recoil spring. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to talk about, this recoil spring, I don't love it. Okay, let me give you guys a closer look at this recoil spring. So this recoil spring is like if anything was going to have a problem, I would think this would have a problem. This is about the size of or the thickness of an AK-47 recoil spring, and I have broken AK-47 recoil springs. Okay? It might have taken like some 10,000 rounds, but I did break them. Okay, and if you don't have that recoil spring, the guns that I commission. By contrast, okay, AR-15s, I got many of them. I have never seen an AR-15 recoil spring or return spring break. Never, ever, ever. Even on, let's say, AR-9s, right? Because they're a little bit more brutal because it's direct blowback. Never had one that failed. I mean, they might get weaker over time, never failed. And if you look on the ground here, I'm probably standing on about 300 round, 300,000 cases. Okay, so even with all that shooting on ARs, I have never broken a recoil spring. I've never seen a buffer fail. So that's basically, I mean, it's probably breakable, but as far as I've seen, it's unbreakable. Okay, this looks like something that can break. So this is something that you want to keep an eye on. You're probably going to need to replace this after so many rounds. The bolt, get the bolt out. Okay, the bolt carrier and the bolt itself looks very AR-15 like. I'm not going to take this apart because we're outdoors over here. So the bolt over here, I'll give you guys a closer look. Right, so that looks very AR-15 like. This is the bolt carrier. It kind of looks like it looks almost like a long stroke, but it's not. Okay, a couple times I kind of confused myself. It's not a long stroke because the piston is separate, but like when you first look at it, you might think that it is a long stroke, but it's not. It's a short stroke because the piston actually pushes on this over here to work it. So this is a solid piece of metal. You're probably not going to have any problems with this. So if I was to identify the vulnerability on the Scar, it's this part right here, the recoil spring. Okay, so let's put this guy back together. So you got to pull the bolt forward. There you go. So the bolt, the charging handle can go on either side. The charging handle sits very high. So on this particular Scar here, this ACOG has these Frankenstein bolts on the side here, right? You see how these, and there are other options, aftermarket options, but because these bolts are here, this charging handle, because it sits high, it has to be on this side because otherwise your hand would be running into these bolts, okay? So that's one of the drawbacks of having this reciprocating charging handle. If you have a big enough scope here, that charging handle is going to interfere with the scope. Okay, now they do have the non-reciprocating ones. Okay, you do have to pay extra money for it, but still, I mean, it's still going to sit high, and still, even with the non-reciprocating one, you still have to charge it. So if you have a big enough scope here and you go to charge it, you could run into some difficulties. They do have handles that curve down. Okay, which, you know, again, now it can interfere with other things like your hand. It shouldn't, because your hand's going to be mostly up here, but it could, let's say, maybe catch your sleeve or something if it curves down. So that's an issue with the reciprocating charging handle. Put this guy back together. Okay, so putting this back together is pretty easy. Take the boot, slide it back in. If you find it sticks, just push on the back of that rubber. Now, before I put this together, this rubber here, and I mentioned this in the other video, that's one of the things you want to keep an eye on. Make sure that, because that bolt is coming back, make sure this doesn't wear down, you know, over thousands of rounds, okay? So that's something to keep in mind. And again, run it in the suppressor setting, even if you're not using a suppressor, because it's still going to be more than enough gas to run your system. So there's no reason to run the gun over gas. Okay, so the suppressor setting, when you're behind the gun, is going to be that 2 o'clock position. Okay? So let's get you there. So this slides in from the back, and then just pulls back, and then you put your pin in. Okay. Now I want to say this about the charging handle. Okay, this is a very light charging handle. Okay, this recoil spring is very light. Like, I can pull this with one finger. You can see how easy. So one of the things with the Scar is it does have a very heavy recoil. This is with the 308. Okay, it has a very heavy recoil. I suspect with the AR-15s, because they have the buffer weight plus the heavier recoil spring, that picks up a lot more of the recoil. The Scar has a very sharp, quick recoil. Now on the Scar 17, okay, I'm sorry, not this is on the Scar 16, right? On a 16, which is the 5.56, one of the issues that came up in the military trials is particularly with the reciprocating charging handle, and particularly because this was so light, if it would hit anything, catch a piece of your clothing or something, basically the gun would stop working. Okay, so that was one of the issues that they ran into with the Scar 16, and between that and the cases getting stuck up in the up on top of the operating rod, that's why the military never accepted the Scar 16. Okay, with the Scar 17, those two things were not an issue because number one, the 308 cases are bigger, so they weren't getting stuck up in that operating rod area, and the other thing is because it has a lot more recoil. I mean, it could, even if it hit something, there was less of a chance that it would jam up just because there's just so much, so much power coming back from that 308 or 7.62 by 5.1 round. Okay, so the 5.56 version had that issue. The 308 version, not so much. Okay, so this is the Scar 17. So let's go to the MCX. Okay, so MCX. Okay, it has two takedown pins. Okay, similar to your AR-15. Let's punch these guys out. I'm gonna have to get a case to pull these up. All right, so you pull out the pins. Actually, the back has. Let me show you the back pin. So the back pin, as you can see, sticks out a little bit more. So that's a little easier to pull out. The front one is like a standard AR-15. It's a little bit tighter on this. In general, the SIGs the pins tend to be a little bit tighter because the upper and the lower are a little bit tighter fitting. If anything, just push it out with it. Use a case to push it in, and then you can pull it out. Okay, so this separates. Okay, just like your AR-15. Now, as far as, let's take a look at the lower. This looks AR-15 mil-spec, but I've heard that different versions are and other versions are not. Basically, if you're planning to put some aftermarket trigger group in here, some aftermarket AR trigger group in here, you have to verify that the MCX version that you have will work with whatever aftermarket trigger group in here. Okay, so this is almost mil-spec, but a lot of people have said it's not, depending on the version that you buy. Okay, safeties works the same. Let's see, if you drop the hammer, yeah, safety does not go on. Okay, so there's really not that much more to say about the lower, other than it does not have a buffer weight. It does not have that recoil spring, and it will side fold. Okay, so one of the nice things about having the buffer weight is that you can kind of tune the gun. Like if you want, a little bit less recoil, or if you want the gun to be able to work with under more adverse conditions, you can put a lighter buffer weight, you can put a heavier buffer weight, so you can use the buffer weight to tune it. So the MCX does not have a buffer weight. So since it doesn't have a buffer weight and a buffer spring, what does it have? Okay, so what it has is, this is the bolt. Okay, this is where the piston hits this, right, to cycle this, right? So, and this is the recoil spring. So again, this is the weakness, I think, of the MCX. Okay, and actually, one of the things I did when I started shooting this gun is I looked up MCX problems, and one of the first problems I found with the MCX is like this recoil spring having like blown up. Okay, like the back fell out and one of the springs was hanging out. So this is, again, the recoil spring here is a potential vulnerability of the MCX. Okay, so on both the Scar and the MCX, the recoil springs seem to be the weak points as compared to you know, an AR where like you never think of an AR recoil spring going bad. Okay, now in another video I did a takedown on this. I'm not going to do it out here outdoors. What I do want to show you guys, first of all, the charging handle is proprietary, right? So let's give you a close up. So basically that hooks onto there. So now this is some, like, over time I can see these two things wearing out a little bit, and maybe this slipping, because there's just so little meat there for this thing to grab on to. So that might be like a long-term issue with this. However, this charging handle looks like it's a much heavier duty steel than what what you typically see with your charging handles. So this does seem a little bit stronger. However, that is another area that I would keep an eye on. Recoil spring and the point where the charging handle and the bolt carrier make contact. Okay. Now, what I want to show you guys as far as getting to the gas valve to clean it, I have seen people that can kind of get their fingers in there and take it apart. I'm not able to do it. So once you take this apart, because basically the pin that holds the upper to the lower also locks the rail in place. So if you just hit it like that, you'll pull this forward. Okay, so that's how that comes apart. Okay, and then that's what allows you to access the gas valve. That's the adjustable gas valve. So again, this has two positions. Okay, so when you're looking from behind the gun, left is the suppressed position, right is standard. So I've been shooting it in the suppressed position, even though I don't have a suppressor on this, and the gun cycles just fine. Okay, so keep it in the suppressed position unless you have an issue where you need more gas, right? Because the gun will beat itself less. Now, in order to remove this and get to the piston to clean it, there's an indent here. You push the indent in, and then you turn, while you're holding the indent in, you turn this upside down, like all the way, and then now it will pull out, and then your piston will come out, and that's how you clean it. So, just like the scar, right, the bolt is not going to get dirty, okay, because the gases don't come back here. So, I mean, eventually you have to clean it, but most of the times when you're cleaning it, this is what you need to concern yourself with, right? You need to concern yourself with getting the gas valve off, getting the piston off, and cleaning this part, okay? And then every so often you can also clean the bolt, all right? So that's what you gotta concentrate on. So now to put this thing back together, okay, we're just gonna take this, line up the rail, so you pull it all the way back so that here, let me show you guys the camera. So basically, you just hit this to separate it, right? And then you see how those, once you line it up, right? You see how those two are going to match up, right there, and that's where the pin's going to go through to hold the two pieces together. Okay. So let's get a charging handle in. There you go. Get the bolt in. Okay. And it goes together really nicely. Okay, good. So, between the MCX and the Scar, okay, which one do I like better? Well, listen, if I was going to war, I would take the Scar because it's been military tested. I do find that the MCX is easier to work with just because it's got M-lock, it's got QD points on it. So the MCX is easier to work with. However, I really don't trust that recoil spring that sits on top of the bolt. Okay, I think that's going to be, that can be an area of problems. All right, especially if you're running up high round counts. So here's the thing, like you might say, well, just get yourself a, an extra bolt, an extra recoil spring. Yeah, I don't know how much they are, but I'm sure they're not cheap. Okay, I like on a standard AR-15, your recoil springs I think are like somewhere between $3 and $5. The bolts you can buy a full, bolt for like $50, right, from Palmetto. So the parts on either of these two guns are not going to be cheap. Okay, so because of the recoil spring in the MCX, which I don't fully trust, okay, not that I've had a problem, okay, but it's just I see that as a point of weakness. I would go with the SCAR, okay, even though I don't like the recoil spring in this a whole lot more. I think it's bigger, right? Bigger things, bigger springs tend to break less. Okay, that's one of the things I have found just over the years. Bigger springs tend to be a little bit more reliable. So of course, the AR spring being the biggest tends to be the most reliable. Okay, and that's after, me personally having shot hundreds of thousands of rounds. Okay, and like I said, people say AKs don't break. I break AKs. I shoot them enough to actually break them, and I've broken the recoil spring on an AK-47, okay? And it wasn't American made, it was Romanian, okay? Now, how about the SCAR, the H&K 416, okay? So now, which to tell you the truth, between, if we have to go piston, right? And I haven't shot an H&K 416, I've seen the setup. I like that the best, I think, because it utilizes the same recoil spring as standard AR-15. It utilizes the same buffer weight, right? So you can adjust it from the back using the buffer weight. That's something that you can't do with either of these two designs, okay? And there's actually two companies that make aftermarket piston kits where you could just take any Palmetto and kind of upgrade it to a piston system, and I think they cost something like $250 to $300. Okay, and what you would do on that is you remove the gas block, you put on a different gas block, you put on the bolt that they give you. Right, the bolt will be similar to the bolt that's in this SIG MCX with minus that recoil spring, because that piston needs to hit the bolt. And then there's an operating rod. So I've seen somebody actually do the upgrade, and it seems pretty simple. Now, I don't know how reliable an aftermarket piston, piston upgrade would be, right? Would I take that to combat? No, because it hasn't been tested enough. It's just an aftermarket add-on. However, the H&K 416, right, or whatever the civilian version is, that has gone to combat. So on the H&K 416, I like that it's got like a standard AR-15 buffer weight, buffer spring, okay, and it's got a very simple gas system with a piston rod behind it that just pushes into a very basic AR-15 bolt. The only difference is that the bolt doesn't have a gas key. It just has a surface for the piston to hit. So between these three piston designs, okay, the SIG MCX, the FNN SCAR, and the HK 416 piston design, between these four piston designs, I think I would go with the H&K, okay, with the H&K 416. Again, I forgot what the civilian version is. I did look it up. I just can't remember it offhand. So there's some thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. If you got any different opinions, please let me know, and let me know why. Okay, I want to hear the why part, because again, this isn't something that I have. These two guns over here, it's not like I've put thousands of rounds on them. Okay, I probably have put, I don't know, maybe about 100 on each. So I haven't shot thousands of rounds on them. So I'm just giving you my initial impressions, really, based on what I've seen and what I've researched. And if you guys got any other ideas or have any other knowledge on why one might be preferable to the other, please let me know so that we can all learn together, okay? So drop some comments. Talk to you all soon.